Hi everyone, I'm here today to talk to you about 25 books that I think should be on your radar. They are certainly on my radar, and if you enjoy the kind of books that I read and review, then I think these may be of interest to you as well. These are 25 books that are coming out in the second half of this year. Some of them I already have advanced readers copies of. I have 10 physical copies of the books that I'm going to be talking to you about. And then I also have a list of 15 other books that I either have on pre-order or will be receiving proofs of, have requested proofs of. Yesterday I couldn't really sleep and I got up super early and went through publishers' catalogues. I'm often asked how I find out about new releases, and yes, as part of my job as a book reviewer, I'm contacted by publicists about future releases. But I also go through publisher catalogues myself to see what's out there, and anybody can do that. If you go to any publisher website, normally if you scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says contact us, there should also be a tab that says catalogues that you can click on, and then you can see their brochure of what they've got coming out soon, and it's always fun to go through. So I went through some yesterday, made a list of some books that I hadn't heard about and reminded myself of some books that I was aware of, and I thought I would just sit down today and talk to you about them. The first three books, which I will quickly get through so we can move on to other people's books, are some of my own books that are coming out this year. So I have one new book coming out in October, and I have two of my previous books coming out in paperback, which were previously available in hardback. So this is Franklin and Luna and the Book of Fairy Tales. It's the third book in my Franklin and Luna series, which is illustrated by Katie Harnett. This is for anyone aged, I think we say 3 to 7, but all adults too. Anyone who loves dragons, but it is primarily aimed at kids 3 to 7. And you don't have to read the three books in order, though I would obviously recommend you do, because there are character arcs and all of that jazz. The first one is called Franklin's Flying Bookshop, but yes, this is the third one, Franklin and Luna and the Book of Fairy Tales, and it is available in a few different languages as well. I will link my website down below if you want to find out about foreign languages. And then the paperback edition, which was a surprise to me too, of the Bookshop book is coming out in August. I say that this is a surprise because the hardback came out in 2014, so it's been a while, and it's just always been available in hardback. And then my publisher said, wait, we thought about it, and actually when we do the next reprint, we would like to make a paperback edition. This is a love letter to bookshops all around the world that I wrote 7 years ago. It's about bookshops on boats and on buses, the biggest bookshop in the world, the smallest bookshop, the most remote. And I spoke to booksellers everywhere. I interviewed authors about their favourite places. I speak about the history of books and bookshops. It was an absolute joy to write. So I've written a new introduction, the rest is still the same. The photographs that were in the hardback are still in this, though in the paperback they're black and white, and in the hardback they're in colour. So if you've been meaning to get your hands on this, I would, if you're interested in getting the colour photographs, I would buy that now, because once the current reprint that is out in the world is sold out, it will only be available in paperback. But the paperback is available for pre-order right now, and it's coming out at the end of August. And then finally, my new book is coming out in October. This is The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers and Other Gruesome Tales, illustrated by Adam D'Souza, and this is for anyone aged 8+. So the target market is middle grade. That's who it's primarily marketed for, so 8 to 12, but I'm hoping that adults will love it too. I wrote it as a book that I would have loved as both a kid and that I love as an adult. It has a ribbon bookmark. It has colour plates in here, I think 30 of them, and Adam has also done black and white border illustrations too. It's a collection of fairy tales from around the world, 14 of them that I have retold in their traditional forms, but with more diverse range of characters, celebrating queer characters, more positive representation of disfigurement and disability. And yeah, I have loved writing this book. I have made a whole video talking about it and reading one of the stories in here as well. So if you'd like to go find out about that, I'll link it down below. Releasing a book at the moment, is really hard. So if this tickles your fancy, it would mean so much if you could pre-order it, and pre-ordering is available worldwide. I have links to everywhere in the description box down below, and of course those links include to your local bookshop, and you can also call your local bookshop, or you can visit there if you're comfortable doing that, and you can pre-order with them as well. Okay, so those are my book babies out of the way, but let me talk to you about other people's books. So let me bring up this Word document that I made at like 5 AM yesterday. Actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will go through, let me lift these. I'll go through the books that I have in physical form first, and then I'll talk about the books that I don't yet have copies of. I'm not going to be doing this in order of release date, so if you would like to find out when they're being released and I don't say, I will try and say wherever possible. Then you can Google. So this one is no surprise to anybody. Not going to dwell on it. I have to say, like, I love Conversations with Friends so much. I really didn't love Normal People. So I'm excited about this, but also a bit like, I don't know, because maybe it's going to be, you know, one of her books that I don't end up loving, but I am really interested to read it. The blurb does sound more like Conversations with Friends than Normal People. It is about a group of friends who are in a very, I think, messy relationship. I think they've probably been sleeping with each other. That tends to be the direction that Sally Rooney goes in. One of them is a novelist. Of course, there is some travel involved as well. I do find it interesting how she talks about toxic friendships and the messiness of identity and trying to find yourself, and sometimes it's really melodramatic and infuriating, and sometimes it's relatable. So that is coming out in September, 7th of September. This one isn't coming out until November. This is Somebody Loves You by Mona Arshi. I have read Mona's poetry before and really loved it. This is her debut novel. It says, Ruby gives up talking at a young age. Her mother isn't always there to notice. She comes and goes and goes and comes until one day she doesn't. Silence becomes Ruby's refuge, sheltering her from the weather of her mother's mental illness and a pressurized suburban atmosphere. Also coming out in November is this, Sarah Moss's new novel. Is this the one I'm most excited about? Possibly. I think because I have never felt let down by anything that Sarah has written. So this is a novel about a woman called Kate. Kate has been away and she's come home. It is set in current times, so she has to quarantine for 2 weeks because she's been away, but she feels really claustrophobic. So she decides that she's going to break the rules and she's going to go for a run. And she goes for a run up a mountain that she lives near and doesn't tell anyone that she's going because she doesn't want to get caught. But then she falls when she's out on the mountain, and I think she sprains her ankle or she breaks her leg, I'm not sure, but she's stuck and she doesn't know what to do because nobody knows that she is there, and she's also feeling guilt about being there in the first place. I'm sure that this is going to be absolutely brilliant. Let me tell you that one of my favourite things as a book reviewer is now being on Persephone's mailing list. I mean, I think I can retire happy now. I think a reason that it feels really special is that they have left London now. They have moved to Bath, and obviously I'm not going into town and into shops at the moment anyway, so I wouldn't be benefiting from them being in the city that I live in, but I took some comfort in knowing that they're not that far away. But now they have gone, they've moved to Bath. One of these days I will get to visit them. They are a publishing house as well as a bookshop that publish forgotten classics, mainly by women. And this is a book of theirs that is coming out in, let me find the date for you. Oh, here we go, 21st of October. And it is a beast. I mean, look at this. It is massive. I feel like this is several books in one. Oh my God. When I tell you that their books smell amazing, they just smell so good. And each of them has end papers that are textiles that were made the year that the book was originally published, and then they have matching bookmarks as well. So yeah, this one is coming out on the 21st of October. Let me unfold the press release so I can read the blurb to you. Okay, it says, so this is The Deepening Stream by Dorothy Canfield Fisher. Dorothy Canfield Fisher is the author of one of Persephone's best-loved novels, The Homemaker, about a husband and wife who role swap, which was published in 1924. 6 years later, she wrote The Deepening Stream, which Persephone reprints now. It is in effect a trilogy, there we go, so it is several books in one, about Métis's dysfunctional upbringing, her happy marriage, and the family's years in France from 1916 to 1919, bravely helping the war effort. Virtually unavailable as it was first published and never rediscovered by historians or readers, The Deepening Stream is a wonderful read, beautifully written and memorable. It is indeed a neglected treasure of the last century by a great American writer. So this is one woman's life, really, through her childhood years, her family years, through the First World War. Something that I love about Persephone books as well is that they fall open so beautifully, so they're really easy to read. As someone obviously who has arthritis, like holding heavy books open can be difficult, but this will very happily lie, you know, on my lap in front of me. So excellent in many different ways. And did I mention, I did mention, it smells so incredible. I want to know what they put in there. It's amazing. Another book that I am so excited about, this one is coming out in September. It's Ruth Ozeki's new novel, and I can't remember when her last novel came out, but it has been a while. She's the author of My Year of Meats, A Tale for the Time Being, and third one, which I have just completely forgotten the name of. It doesn't matter because that's not the one that we're talking about today. She also brought out a novella called My Face. This is called The Book of Forms and Emptiness. It says the first words of a book are of utmost importance. The moment of encounter when a reader turns to that first page and reads those opening words, it's like locking eyes or touching someone's hand for the first time, and we feel it too. Books don't have eyes or hands, it's true, but when a book and a reader are meant for each other, both of them know it. So that is a quote from the novel itself, but doesn't actually tell us much about it. So let me find the blurb. Okay, it says 1 year after the death of his beloved musical father, 13-year-old Benny O begins to hear voices. The voices belong to things in his house, a sneaker, a broken Christmas ornament, a piece of wilted lettuce. Although Benny doesn't understand what these things are saying, he can sense their emotional tone. Some are pleasant, a gentle hum or coo, but others are snide, angry, and full of pain. When his mother develops a hoarding problem, the voices grow even more clamorous. Another book that I'm really excited about, because obviously that is the theme of this video, is a new Nicci French book. This is also coming out in September. They have in recent years released new novels in September. Always been one of my most anticipated releases of the year. So this is about a child who sees a murder, I think, and no one will believe them because they're just a child. She can't tell you, but she will show you. Who's that? Is it an angel, a fairy godmother? I stared at the jagged lines with a sense of disquiet. Her, said Poppy, jabbing at the figure in the picture. He did kill her. What? He did kill and kill and kill. I don't think that I need to tell you how much I love Nicci French, because I speak about it a lot. I'm sure that I will read that one very soon. I'm also planning a video where I talk about all of their books. I have all of them. I think it's about 25, 26, and I have a couple left to read. And once I've read all of them, I'll do an author spotlight recommending my favorites, telling you where I think you should start reading them if you're interested. And finally, the last one I have a physical copy of before we get on to the 15 books on my list. This is Old Lady Voice by Eliza Victoria. This is a novel in translation. It was originally published in Spanish, and it is translated from the Spanish by Charlotte Whittle. It's published by And Other Stories, and I absolutely love this cover. So the blurb says, while her mother is in the hospital with a grave but unnamed illness, Marina spends the summer with her grandmother, waiting to hear whether she'll go home or be bundled off newly orphaned to a convent school. There are no rules here, but that also means that there are no easy ways to fend off the visions of sex and violence that torment and titillate the girl. Presenting a unique and vivid take on a coming-of-age story, Old Lady Voice reimagines childhood through the eyes of its one-of-a-kind, hilarious and endearing narrator, a 9-year-old who can swear like a sailor but think like a novelist. I think that that sounds really, really fun. Okay, let me open my computer and I'll get the list up. If covers are available, which they should be for all of these, I think, I will put them on the screen here. So firstly, one I'm super biased about is my friend, lovely Jean Z. Mingers, has her first adult fiction fantasy book coming out in September, which is called The Flames of Albiyon. It is the first in a trilogy that she has been writing for a few years now. She's been working so hard on it. It is a queer hope punk book, and I'd never heard the term hope punk until she was talking about it, but it's a real feel-good book about the legend of dragons and dismantling monarchy, and I'm super excited to hold a physical copy of it in my hands. I will link Jean's announcement video in the description box down below. Ray has a new book coming out in, is it September? Oh, I can't remember. It's in the autumn. He has his second full-length poetry collection coming out. It is called All the Names Given, and I absolutely adored his debut full-length collection, which was called The Perseverance. I've spoken about that quite a lot on here. It's a book that I recommend so much. It is about identity and family and race and deafness, and I recorded a podcast with Ray, which I will also link in the description box down below if you want to go and check this out. I've also written Oliver Jeffers down, but very helpfully, I didn't write down the title of the book, so let me find it. Oh yes, it's called There Is a Ghost in This House, and it's coming out on the 14th of September. And I love the snippets of this book that Oliver has been posting. Obviously, this is a children's book. It says, a young girl lives in a haunted house, but has never seen a ghost. Are they white with holes for eyes? Are they hard to see? She'd love to know. Step inside and turn the transparent pages to help her on an entertaining ghost hunt from behind the sofa right up to the attic. With lots of friendly ghost surprises and incredible mixed media illustrations, this unique and funny book will entertain young readers over and over and over again. I love Oliver, so that is exciting. I also saw that a new book is coming out by Claire Keegan. I have had a bit of a hit and miss relationship with some of her books. I've never not liked some, but I think the one that I loved the most, which I think was her debut, was called Antarctica, and it was a short story collection published by Faber a while ago now. I want to say 15 years ago, maybe more. So this is a novel that she has written, and it's called Small Things Like These. It's coming out in the autumn. It's set in Ireland in 1985 on the run up to Christmas, which is always a lovely time to read about. So it says, during the weeks leading up to Christmas, Bill Furlong, a coal and timber merchant, faces his busiest season. Early one morning, he makes a delivery to the local convent and confronts the darkness and complicit silence of a town controlled by the church. So there's really not much is given away in that blurb, but her writing style is so, I was going to use the word beautiful, I don't think that's actually a very helpful descriptor, but lyrical, I think is maybe a more helpful description. I really love her writing style. I also saw that Sarah Hall has a new book coming out in the autumn called Burntcoat, and I have loved several of her books. I really, in particular, loved Wolf Border, which came out a few years ago and was about rewilding of wolves in the Lake District. I thought that this was historical fiction, but it's mentioning lockdown, so I don't know if it's set in current pandemic or if this is about a plague from, you know, history. So it says it's about an artist who's called Edith Harkness, and she knows that she's going to die, so she's looking back on all her artwork and she's locked herself away. She's reflecting on her studio, which is below her like a crucible glowing with memories and desire. And I can't help but think of Max Porter's The Death of Francis Bacon, which came out earlier this year. So yeah, I'm interested to see what reviews of that are like when that one comes out. It's definitely on my radar. Then a book that Tilted Axis are publishing in October is called Love in the Big City by Sang-Young Park, and this is translated from the Korean by Anton Her, and this is a queer Korean title that they are publishing, which I'm really looking forward to. It is about a Korean student who pinballs from home to class to the beds of recent Tinder matches. He and his best female friend go to bars and they talk about their lives and they have very exciting experiences, but then his best friend leaves him to go and settle down with someone else, and he has to reflect on what he's doing with his life without his partner in crime. Another Korean book in translation that I'm looking forward to checking out is called Shoko Smile by Choi Eun-Young, and it's translated from the Korean by Sung Ryu. This is a collection of short stories, and it says that one of them is about a fraught relationship between an exchange student and her host sister. Another is about a young woman who grapples with the death of her lover, traveling to Russia to search for information about him. And in another one, the parents of a teacher who's been killed in an accident try and hide that news from their family to protect them. I will say that I find the authors that this particular author has been compared to a bit ridiculous, because these are all, to me, very different writers. It says, in the tradition of Sally Rooney, Banana Yoshimoto and Marilyn Robinson, writers from different cultures who all take on an unvarnished look at human relationships and the female experience, Choi and Young is a writer to watch. I just feel like they just threw some names onto the page there, and that's not what convinced me that I wanted to pick it up. In September, Kiran Millwood Hargrave has her new children's book coming out, and it's illustrated by her husband Tom, and I'm really looking forward to this one. It's about a young girl called Julia who has moved to a remote island with her parents. Her dad has moved there for work. Her mum is also there to try and find the elusive Greenland shark, and Julia is having all of these dreams about sharks, and I think she becomes rather obsessed with them. There's a lot to do with lighthouses in there as well, which is a favourite imagery of mine. So I'm really looking forward to reading that one. It's coming out in September. Next on my list, one that's coming out in November, is a book called A Faith for Picasso by Ariel Henley, and hers was one of my favourite essays in Disability Visibility, which I read earlier this year. So she's talking about growing up with Crouzon syndrome, and this is just an expansion on that essay, and I'm sure that it's going to be absolutely brilliant. Alia Whiteley has a new short story collection coming up called From the Neck Up, and this is coming out again I think in September. She publishes a lot of science fiction, fantasy, and some of her work I've really loved, especially the stuff that deals with body, less the stuff that deals with space travel. But it's really truly creepy and unnerving, and I think that she is really brilliant. So it says these are 16 stories that deftly unpeel the strangeness of everyday life through beguiling gardens, rebellious bodies, and journeys across familiar worlds with her trademark wit and compassion. I was going through Vintage's catalogue, and I saw that John Burnside has a new book coming out this week, which is called Learning to Sleep. It's his new poetry collection, and it is about living with a sleep disorder. And I was so baffled that I hadn't realised he had a new book coming out. I hadn't received any information about this from a publisher. I hadn't seen anybody else talking about it. And I think this is how asleep I was. I was reading the catalogue, and underneath the blurb there was one quote which said something along the lines of, I love John Burnside. He's a master storyteller, and whenever I pick up a new book I feel in safe hands. Jen Campbell's at times, and I thought, oh my god, someone else called Jen Campbell really loves John Burnside and wrote about him, and then I realised, no, that's just me, that's just something that I said about another of his books. So yeah, I was really not very awake yesterday morning when I was doing this research, but super excited that he has a new poetry book coming out this week, and I will definitely be reading that. Pippa Middlehurst, who wrote Dumplings and Noodles, which is one of my favourite cookbooks. I've been cooking so much from it over the past year, has a new book coming out in September called Bowls and Broths, and it's all about ramen and building broths from scratch, and it also has more dumpling recipes in there as well. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. I will definitely be purchasing that one. I said I've already pre-ordered that one. And then I think I've got all of them, apart from one publisher, which is Pushkin Press, who are publishing so many exciting sounding books this autumn. I think I have 4, if not 5, from their catalogue that I have to tell you about. And a lot of these are crime related books, and they sound really fantastic. So the first one I've written down is called The Scorpion's Head by Hilde van der Meren, and this is translated from the Dutch by Laura Watkinson. It's about a woman called Gail who wakes up injured in a psychiatric hospital in Berlin. She has no memory of what has happened, though she has been also arrested within the hospital because the police suspect her of trying to murder her son. But there is also a dual storyline with this hitman who has been hired to kill people. So she is trying to work out why she has been arrested and whether or not she did try and kill her son. And she really has never thought about killing anyone before. And then we also have the storyline of someone who kills people for a living. And somehow these narratives intersect. So that sounds really interesting. Another one that they're publishing is called The Master Key. This is a reprint. It's by a Japanese author called Masako Tagawa, who's apparently a female gay icon in Japan. I don't know who the translator is of this because it is not coming up. Let me Google because I want to tell you who the translator is. I think it's Simon Grove. Okay, so this is a spine-chilling mystery. It says the K apartments for ladies in Tokyo conceals a sinister past behind each door. A woman who has buried a child, a scavenger mad by ill health, a wife mysteriously guarding her late husband's manuscript, a talented violinist tortured by her own guilt. The Master Key, which opens the door to all of these 150 rooms, links their tangled stories. But now it has been stolen and dirty tricks are afoot. For a deadly secret lies beneath the building, and when it is revealed, there will be murder. Sounds so great, so great. As I said, they are publishing amazing sounding things this autumn. Another one is called A Will to Kill. This is the first in a new series of cozy crime, and it's set in India. It has Agatha Christie vibes to it, but also sounds like Knives Out. It says, aging millionaire Bhaskar Fernandez has invited his relatives to the remote and possibly haunted Greybrook Manor high up in the misty mountains. He knows his guests expect to gain from his death, so to safeguard himself, he writes 2 conflicting wills. Which one of them comes into force will depend on how he dies. Fernandez also invites Harith Athria, a seasonal investigator, to watch what unfolds. I just think that that sounds so good. And then the last one I wanted to mention that Pushkin are publishing is called The Second Woman. This is another novel in translation. This time it is translated from French. It's called The Second Woman by Louise May, and it's translated by Louise Rogers Lalaurie. And this is saying that it is for fans of Promising Young Woman and Lullaby by Leila Slimani. Sandrine is unhappy in her body, her house and her life, but none of that matters when she meets her man. He makes room for her, a place in his home with his son. He cares about where she is, who she is speaking to. He loves her intensely. Everything would be perfect if only the first woman, the one from before, would just stay away. I think this one is going to be a big deal. I think TV rights have already been sold. This is coming out on the 2nd of September. So those are 25 books that are on my radar that are coming out in the next few months. I would love to know if any of these take your fancy, what books you are most looking forward to that are coming out in the second half of this year. If you would like to check out my new book, The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers, that would be incredible. I will link my announcement video in the description box down below, and there also will be links in the description box for where you can pre-order as well. I will list the other titles in the description box down below in case that is helpful. I hope you're all having a good start to the week. I will speak to you very soon and sending lots of love. Bye.